This is the kind of stuff that really does frustrate and annoy me because people people want everything handed to them. They don't want to work for it. And if I complain or my wife Jessica complains, we have a legitimate reason to complain. We have a legitimate gripe because my wife next to me is the greatest writer that I know. And if you ever get a chance to read her stuff, I can send you some of her stuff. But
Absolutely, I'd love to.
but
I just read the After Dolly poem on
oh
I
yeah,
forgot what it's
but
called.
she's a better prose writer than a poet, and so her. But anyway, I'm taught just my wife is in the kitchen, so Jessica Schneider is a great writer. So when she reads it or watches this, sometime I'll have acknowledged that. So, but other than that, yeah, people don't want to take responsibility. They don't. It's such such ego, such, and this is where I'm not saying I'm without ego, but ego in and of itself is neither good nor bad. It's how you use the ego or what you're claiming for it. If I were to claim that I were a grand chess master, and I'm clearly not, that would be ridiculous. That would be arrogant. Uh, the so many bits of arrogance that I see in art are not from people who are claiming they're great when they're not, or vice versa. But it's usually people who will make these absurd statements. They can't back them up, or they're oh Philip K. Dick was a genius. No, he wasn't. Read I in the science fiction book that I did, which I think I sent to you, which is the third of the heroic trilogy. What I do is one of the greatest things you'll ever see in any book is I take a public domain story by Philip K. Dick and I incorporate it.
Is this the skull one?
Yeah, the skull.
Okay, that's the one where the guy keeps getting like he's in a time loop,
Did,
right?
do you read that book already?
No, I think I heard you talk about
Oh,
it.
okay, yeah, yeah. Well, it's the skull, yeah. So I use that story and I deconstruct the story with the character. I take the character uh, and use it in the story, and I show what a real piece of shit the original story was. So trite. So I mean, it was trite even when it was written, but I use it within a context that frames it. So I take the essentials of the story, expand it, and show literally side by side later on. A computer analyzes in the novel. A computer analyzes the story, and because the character is telling the story that tells the story has added his own stuff in. The computer wasn't able to match it up with the story, and this shows the flaws of the computer. But anyway, if you ever get a chance to read that sci-fi book, it's a really brilliant deconstruction, and there's nothing like it in all of literature. And Philip K. Dick, as I said, every movie or every television show that was ever adapted from his works is better because he had some interesting ideas. He had zero ability to create character or to make meaningful stories of any depth. He was an idea guy, but that's about all he had.
It's interesting to me because it almost feels, at least from what I can gather from your writing and criticism, because there's a great chunk of the population that's not very intelligent. There's a great, I'm not saying all people are evil, but there's a great chunk of us who are just, assholes. But it seems like even with the assholish people or the idiots, there's still like a complexity there to the way they think and view things. Like, what was the one thing that, okay, like, so you're not a fan of Hitchcock, from what I've understood.
I mean, Hitchcock is a good popcorn movie maker. There are movies of his I enjoy. There are a few of his films. If Hitchcock had not sold his soul for money, he could have been an auteur. He probably had the ability to be a great artist, but Hitchcock wanted to live comfortably. He wanted to. Hitchcock, in a sense, was the antithesis of Orson Welles.
The reason I brought him up was because I think I read somewhere that you felt that his characters sucked. I could be misquoting you. I
His,
thought you
his,
made a comment.
his characters are cardboard cutouts. In that sense, he's a precursor to Spielberg. He's a better filmmaker than Spielberg. But yeah, his I mean, I enjoy some of his movies. North by Northwest is a good light popcorn movie thriller.
Or
Some of the stuff like Rope showed there are 5 or 6 of his films that show the filmmaker he could have been had he not sold his soul, and that's
the,
the shame of it.
because I remember in your Kurosawa review for the High and Low,
Mm.
was that the one?
Yes, High and
That was
Low, brilliant,
awesome.
brilliant film.
Okay, so at the very end of the film, there's that guy because I
Mm.
don't think the guy ended up poor, correct? I don't, he ended up having a smaller business. Wasn't that the ending?
He ended the Kingo Gondo, I think is his name. He ended up working for another company, a smaller company, and seems to be in line to take that over. And he got humbled, and yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say because there's that scene where he's confronting the guy who set up the whole
Yeah,
kidnapping, and he's like having a bit of a breakdown. He's
yeah,
rattling the bars
yeah.
there, and I think I recall you mentioning in that review that you felt that Hitchcock characters have like some grand reason for doing things. Like I forgot how you phrased it. You made a comment about how Hitchcock didn't understand motivation, how people work,
Well,
and there
yeah.
was a
Hitchcock was plot driven. Hitchcock's characters are basically all marionettes. They're there to look. In a couple of films she does, I mean, Grace Kelly is jaw-droppingly gorgeous. You just as a heterosexual male, I would have licked her from toe to top of her head, but her character has nothing. None of his characters, with two or three exceptions maybe, none of his characters have any real depth. If you look at Wells or you look at Kurosawa, Kingo Gondo is a character that something bad happens. He is a believable, real character that something bad happens to. When something bad happens to whatever character in a Hitchcock film, it's done to get a quick fright. And Hitchcock was good at getting. He was good at the lowest common denominator stuff. He was a good pop artist, but you can't compare Hitchcock to Antonioni. You cannot compare Hitchcock to Bresson. You cannot compare Hitchcock to Tarkovsky. That's absurd. Spielberg is not Kubrick. That's absurd. Spielberg is closer to Ed Wood or the guy who did The Room.
Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I think Ed Wood was actually out of the three the best. I mean, he makes me laugh the most.
yeah. I
Just
mean, unintentionally.
like they don't have that same pretension that the other ones had.
And that's
Um,
and that's one of the things that kills in art is pretension. You know, uh, this idea that that all are you can do a small story. I would much rather see a small film or read a small short story that doesn't have pretension, but that is well executed and has a little moment of insight, even if it's not great, than some big bloated piece of shit. We don't need to have. I mean, if I'm an actor, I mean, yes, it's nice to make money, and I don't begrudge an actor wanting to have that big score or whatnot. But if I've done a few blockbusters, if I'm Matt Damon, and he rode the coattails of the Robin Williams movie that he claimed to have written, even though he and
the Hunting.
yeah,
Was
yeah,
that,
yeah, and that he and Affleck claimed to have written, even though they didn't write it. They were 20 years older.
did you
What?
think it was a good movie?
It was a good movie, good solid prose movie. It wasn't deep nor poetic, but if he really was the artist that he claimed to when he supposedly wrote that, uh, well, why hasn't he done anything even remotely of that quality since? I mean, why? Because that he stumbled upon that by having rewrites by script doctors and whatnot that took an absurd spy plot or whatnot that it was originally supposed to be and made it into that movie. You know, and that's how you can tell the people who really are. I mean, whatever you want to say. I mean, about the Ed Woods or the Tommy Wiseaus, at least their crap, is unpretentious. But so much of the stuff that's full of pretension, the stuff by the Spielbergs, the stuff that this Hollywood crash, Brokeback Mountain stuff. If I have to spoon feed you that oh, you know, Nazis are not good people. Well, I'm telling that's me basically saying you're an idiot. Open your mouth, let me shit in it, and then
Yeah,
you can munch down on my
absolutely.
shit.
I've seen so many movies that are like, hey, check it out, black people are people too.
Yeah,
You're like, no shit, I'm not a sociopath.
yeah.
Everyone's equal. Like, what do you know what I mean? And that's kind of one of the last things I wanted to ask you about because we're talking about like if we're talking about PC films or films that are like emotional that are great. Like compare 12 Years a Slave, which was a brutal but great movie, to I think you put that on your list of great films, right? 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah, but of his first three films, it's the least of the three. The first one in the Irish prison was a great film. The greatest film was Shame of his. The film, from what some people on my list, I haven't seen his fourth film. They said it was by far his worst, and it was the most conventional. And I hope to hell he fucking stops that. You know, if you look at Nuri Bilge Ceylan, the Turkish filmmaker, he's probably the premier filmmaker in the world right now. In terms of big ideas and whatnot. But anyway,